So my name's Lucy Tindall and I'm a Research Programme Manager and this is Emily Hayward, who's a Research Assistant, and we're based in the Mental Health and Addictions Research Group in the Department of Health Sciences at the University of York. And we're here today to talk to you about COMBAT, which stands for Community-Based Behavioural Activation Training for Depression in Adolescents. So COMBAT is a 5-year programme of research which officially started in March 2021, and it's funded by the National Institute for Health Research Programme Grants for Applied Research Fund. It's currently being conducted between the University of York with Tees Esconway Valley NHS Foundation Trust as the study sponsor. And the overall aim of COMBAT is to develop a bespoke treatment package based on behavioural activation that can be delivered in community settings to young people with mild to moderate depression by a variety of healthcare professionals. And the overall aim is really to evaluate its clinical effectiveness, its cost effectiveness and its acceptability. So COMBAT is made up of 4 work packages. The first one, work package 1, is co-production and road mapping. And this is where we're conducting workshops with a variety of stakeholders, including parents, young people and healthcare professionals, to really help us to develop a new behavioural activation intervention. And from that, we're then going to test it in a small feasibility study just to see what works, what doesn't, and make further refinements to that. We then have an extra round of PPI following that, where we're going to make final refinements. Work package 2 is looking at the effectiveness and acceptability of our intervention, where we're going to conduct a large randomised controlled trial with an embedded ethnographic study and an embedded phenomenological study to assess the clinical effectiveness of the intervention as well as its acceptability. Running in parallel to work package 2 is work package 3, which is an economic evaluation and modelling. And as part of this, we're going to develop a resource use questionnaire and obtain information from young people about the kind of healthcare resources that they've used in the previous 6 months to be able to see whether our new intervention is cost effective. And our final work package 4, is the process evaluation and generalization stage, where we're going to look and see how and why our behavioural activation intervention works. And as part of that, we're going to look at contextual factors, so things like information about the individuals who've used it and the delivery settings, some implementation factors, so how our BA package has been learnt, applied, adapted and accessed. And then we're also going to look at some mechanistic factors, so if depression did or did not change, and how that change or no change came about. So we're going to return a little bit to work packages 1 and 2 a bit later, and we'll go into a bit more detail about the feasibility work and the randomised control trial. So in terms of why this research is important, there's a high rate of low mood and depression in young people, with approximately 1.1% of 10 to 14-year-olds and 2.8% of 15 to 19-year-olds experiencing depression. And the impact of depression is extensive and negatively affects emotional, social and physical health. There's also been associations acknowledged between depression and engagement in many negative behaviours such as smoking, alcohol and substance use and self-harm, as well as poor social functioning and educational underachievement. A lot of adolescents also go on to then develop issues in adulthood as well, and it's therefore been suggested that the benefits of delivering interventions to young people may be greater than at any other time of the lifespan. However, there are significant current pressures on CAM services, and as a result of this, there's gaps between treatment provision and need. Therefore, we're finding that the entry thresholds for CAM accesses are incredibly high, meaning that a lot of young people with mild to moderate presentations of low mood and depression are less likely to be able to access support. So I'm just going to hand over to Emily, who's going to tell you a bit more about behavioural activation and also discuss what we mean when we say mild to moderate depression.
Thank you, Lucy. So as many of you will probably know kind of from your clinical work, depression is a clinical condition with 10 kind of core symptoms. So as part of this research, we're wanting to look at mild to moderate depression. So in order to recognise depression, we initially look out for 2 symptoms. So the first of which is feeling low, sad or irritable much of the time. And the second is losing interest and having no pleasure in day-to-day activities, and that includes our interactions with people. So the additional 8 symptoms that are commonly present in depression can be split into 2 groups. So the first group on the left-hand side affect how our mind works. So that's things like not being able to pay attention or being able to concentrate, feeling guilty or disliking ourselves, feeling hopeless about the future, and thinking of death and of self-harm. And the second group of symptoms affect how our body works. So it's things like sleep disturbance, appetite disturbance, feeling sluggish or agitated or on edge, or kind of like having no energy or feeling tired. In order to kind of diagnose depression, we would kind of look for these additional symptoms as well. So how does behavioural activation work? So there are several kind of psychological interventions that are recommended in the treatment of young people who are experiencing low mood or depression. And these are according to NICE guidelines. So things like cognitive behavioural therapy, interpersonal therapy, family therapy, psychodynamic psychotherapy. However, a promising low-intensity alternative is something called behavioural activation, or BA for short. So the theory behind BA really focuses on the relationship between our mood and activity. And we kind of like to sort of use this analogy of a chicken and an egg, as kind of demonstrated on the screen here. So the question is, which one comes first? So when we feel demoralised, frustrated, tired, or understimulated, which is typical in depression, we tend to stop doing things that are good for us, because understandably it takes a lot more to kind of do that, and everything feels like more effort and we don't look forward to doing it. So the less we do, the worse we feel. The worse we feel, the less we do. Naturally, when we feel happy, energetic and motivated, we tend to do things we enjoy and make us feel good about ourselves. So the more we do, the better we feel, and the better we feel, the more we do. So our mood affects what we do, but also what we do affects our mood. So at this point, behavioural activation introduces the idea that we should not wait until we feel better in order to do things, to do activities that we enjoy and make us feel good. Instead, we do these activities when we feel low so that we can feel better. So in this kind of analogy, behavioural activation starts with the egg. So in our chicken and egg situation, behavioural activation starts with our egg, which represents the activity, and the chicken follows, which represents mood. So the more we do, the more eggs we have, the better we feel, more chickens we have. And the better we feel, more chickens, and the more we do, the more eggs we have. So behavioural activation is not only about how much we do, but most importantly, it's about what we do. So behavioural activation is about doing meaningful, purposeful, and rewarding activities. So how does BA work to combat depression? So like we said, behavioural activation is this psychological treatment that's based on this really important principle of doing more activities and the right type of activities. And through doing this, we're able to kind of tap into the emotional rewards that life can offer us. So things like pleasure, a sense of achievement, connection with things and people that are important to us. So as kind of shown by the diagram here, the more rewards, the better we feel. The more we do, the more we do, the more we do, the more we do, the more rewards we get. So behavioural activation is really about supporting a young person to engage in a cycle of enjoyable, purposeful and meaningful activities, and that leads to emotional rewards and feeds into good feelings. So I'm going to pass back over to Lucy now, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the literature into research into BA with young people.
Thank you. So a lot of the literature out there really focuses on the role of BA in the treatment of adults with depression. And we've found that behavioural activation has been shown to be as effective as other therapies, including cognitive behaviour therapy, in reducing depression symptoms with adults. There's also been research to suggest that it can be delivered by those not formally trained as psychological therapists, therefore suggesting it might be a more cost-effective alternative. It can be easier to deliver, and it can be simpler to understand for individuals experiencing depressive symptoms. And as a result of that, behavioural activation is included as a recommended treatment within NICE guidelines for adults. LESS has focused on the role of BA with young people, although this is starting to change. We're starting to see a lot more research there. So the largest study to date that we know of is one by Macaulay et al., which was conducted in the USA, where it was a randomised control trial to compare behavioural activation with evidence-based treatments, including cognitive behaviour therapy and interpersonal therapy. And the authors found that there was similar effectiveness across these different treatments. More locally, the first European randomised control trial was a feasibility study completed by Kitchen et al. In 2020. And this looked to compare behavioural activation to usual care across 3 CAM services. And this study demonstrated that there were actually more positive outcomes, well, better outcomes for the individuals that had been randomised to behavioural activation. So, for example, at 3 months, 57% of the BA group no longer met criteria for a major depressive disorder, and that was in comparison to only 13% of the control group. There was also improvements in functioning scores for the BA group, but reduced functioning scores for those receiving usual care. A lot of research has also been conducted by researchers at the University of Reading, who've conducted case series, pilot and feasibility work. And they've demonstrated the acceptability and clinical effectiveness of behavioural activation in both CAM and school-based services. In 2019, the NICE made recommendations for further research to be conducted about BA with young people, and therefore COMBAT is kind of one of those studies. This is why we're doing this now. So in terms of where we're up to, should we watch the little car move that Emily so nicely put together? We're kind of in the middle at the minute between work packages 1 and 2. So we've conducted our first round of PPI work. We have therefore developed our first version of our intervention, and we're currently testing it within a small feasibility study. And from that, we're planning our randomised control trial, which we're hoping to get opened in June of this year. And Emily's going to tell you a little bit about the feasibility study, and then I'll come back and just talk a little bit about the randomised control trial.
Yes, so as Lucy mentioned, we're currently at the stage of undertaking our feasibility study. So as part of this, we're wanting to recruit 15 young people to take part in the main study, 7 parents and guardians, and 30 professionals to take part in the qualitative element of this. But I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. So far, I can say hot off the press, we actually recruited our 15th young person yesterday. So that's, really, really good news. And we've still got a couple more that have expressed interest to take part. So so as part of this, the feasibility study, the young people will receive our Bespoke Ba Package, and this is made up of 5 modules, and they're delivered over 8 sessions, and each session lasts up to 30 to 45 minutes, and in between sessions, the young person will also complete some between-session tasks to help consolidate their learning. So as part of the research, we meet with them at baseline and an 8 weeks follow-up, and we collect the measures there just in the bottom left-hand corner there. So we have things like an interview to assess depression severity, and then just kind of other questionnaires around their mood and resource use and things like that. So as part of the qualitative study, obviously we're interested to speak to the young people, parents and professionals about their experience of either receiving or delivering this intervention, to sort of get their feedback and find out ways that we can refine it for the RCT. So the young people will be interviewing them at their 8-week follow-up, so those are going to start fairly soon. And parents and professionals will be invited to attend a focus group or an individual interview if they prefer, and we'll kind of speak to them, professionals, about their experiences. So all of the interviews will be transcribed, and we'll be analysing that using template analysis. And the template that we've developed has been kind of adapted from the Intervention Taxonomy Framework, the ITAX, by Schultz et al. So I'll hand back over to Lucy, and she's going to tell you about the RCT.
Thank you. So following on from the feasibility study, we're planning on opening a large randomised control trial where we're going to compare our new behavioural activation intervention to usual care. So our population is adolescents aged 12 to 18 years who are experiencing mild to moderate depression. We're going to screen young people using 2 measures. So we've got the RCADS depression subscale and also the PHQ-9A. Anyone scoring above 65 on the RCADS and below 15 on the PHQ-9A will be eligible. However, we were quite conscious that we might find that a lot of individuals are referred to us who might have more severe presentations of depression, and therefore if anybody scores above 15 on the PHQ-9 or answers any questions suggesting that they might be at risk of self-harm, then we will conduct a clinical interview just to ascertain that they've got mild to moderate depression. So essentially anybody eligible for secondary level CAMS care will not be able to enter the research. All young people entering the research will be randomised on a 1-to-1 basis to either behavioural activation or usual care. And this will be the usual care that whatever the services that they're part of offers. So it could be doing nothing, it could be signposting to alternative support, it could include another psychological intervention or medication. We're then going to follow young people up 6 and 12 months after they've taken part in the study, and we're going to be conducting this in community-based settings, so in educational settings and as well as charity organisations. So our current situation is we're scoping sites. We've got quite a few sites now that have expressed interest and are on board, and we're hoping, as I mentioned, to open this in June 2022. Overall, we need to recruit 236 young people over a 27-month recruitment period, and as part of that, the first 9 months is an internal pilot. As part of the randomised controlled trial, we've got an ethnographic study as well, where we're going to have a clinical member of the research team observe some of the intervention delivery. So this will allow us to explore what support is being offered and also allow us to assess BA fidelity to our intervention. And then we've got a phenomenological study where we're going to conduct interviews with 20% of our participant sample. So that will be individuals from both treatment arms, to ask really about their experience of the support that they've received. And we will also be speaking to professionals as part of that. So any professional who's taken part will be invited to an interview to discuss their experience. And we're hoping that you might invite us back next year to come and give you a bit of an update as to where we're up to. And that's it. So thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, please let us know. Thank you.